What happens when power meets the one thing it can't control? Truth? It was just another quiet night at a gas station on the outskirts of town. The fluorescent lights hummed above the cracked pavement, and the sound of fuel pumps echoed faintly in the still air. But sometimes, stories that change people's hearts don't start in courtrooms or newsrooms. They start right here, in places where nobody's watching. A 17-year-old boy stood by his mother's old sedan, humming softly to himself while filling up the tank. No crime, no commotion, just another ordinary night, until flashing red and blue lights shattered the calm. A police cruiser rolled in, slow, deliberate, and full of authority. The officer inside wasn't here for a crime. He was here for a feeling, that dark, twisted sense of superiority that feeds on fear. And tonight, he thought he found his next target. But what he didn't know was that the woman walking out of the convenience store, calm, composed, and quietly fierce, wasn't just anyone's mother. She was Special Agent in the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And in the next 5 minutes, this officer would learn a lesson that every badge should come with. Never judge by color, judge by conduct. Because tonight, justice wasn't coming from the system. It was standing right in front of him. The night sat heavy over the small southern town. The kind of stillness that feels almost staged, like the world holding its breath before something shifts. The gas station stood lonely at the corner of a half-empty highway, its flickering neon sign humming the word open like a desperate reminder that life still moved here. Crickets sang faintly in the dry grass beyond the parking lot, and a distant freight train wailed somewhere in the dark, a sound that always carried a strange sadness. The air smelled faintly of gasoline and rain that never came. The pavement glistened under the artificial glow of the overhead lights, not from water, but from the faint mist of humidity that clung to everything. Inside the small convenience store, a lone cashier scrolled through his phone, unaware that the night outside was about to turn into a story people would whisper about for years. Across the lot, a black sedan idled by Pump 4, its headlights dimmed. A teenage boy leaned against the door, lost in his music, his world quiet and safe, for now. His hoodie was pulled over his head, not out of defiance, but out of habit, out of comfort. Then, the peace shifted. A subtle vibration in the air, first the distant hum of a car engine, then the piercing crack of tires crunching gravel. The boy looked up, earbuds dangling, as a police cruiser rolled in slow. Headlights sliced through the stillness, flooding him in harsh white light. The officer stepped out, boots clicking against the pavement, his shadow long and deliberate. The sound of the car door slamming felt louder than it should have been, like a gunshot in the quiet. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked once, then stopped. Even the crickets seemed to fall silent. Inside the store, the boy's mother, unaware of the scene unfolding outside, was just setting her coffee on the counter, chatting softly with the cashier. Her tone was calm, her smile faint, her posture effortless. She'd had long days before, long stares before, but something deep inside her stirred. The kind of instinct only mothers have when the world outside their child shifts. By the time she stepped through the door, the night had already changed. The air wasn't calm anymore. It was waiting. He wasn't a troublemaker. Malik Carter, 17, had the quiet confidence of someone raised on respect, the kind his mother drilled into him since he could walk. A kid who said yes, man no, so even when the world didn't always deserve it. His hands were steady as he held the fuel nozzle, but his eyes, deep, alert, flickered with something sharper. Not fear. Awareness. He'd grown up knowing how quickly peace could turn to confrontation, especially for boys who looked like him. Malik's hoodie had a small tear near the wrist, his sneakers scuffed from basketball games and long walks home. His phone played soft R&B in one earbud. Music, his escape, his silence in a noisy world. But as the cruiser's headlights bathed him in white, his music stopped. The familiar weight of unease pressed on his chest. He stood still, hands visible, the way his mother had taught him. Stay calm. Don't give them reason. Then came Officer Bradley Kane, mid-40s, tall, with the kind of posture that wasn't confidence but habit. A man molded by authority and hardened by the illusion of power. His face carried that practiced smirk, the kind that said he'd done this before, too many times, and enjoyed the control it gave him. His hand rested casually near his holster as he approached, not because he needed to, but because he could. "Evening," he said, voice sharp, clipped. "This your car?" Malik nodded, words caught in his throat. Kane's gaze flicked over him like a scanner. Hoodie, skin, age, alone. All the boxes he thought he needed to check. Inside the store, Danielle Carter signed her receipt and thanked the cashier. She was in her late 30s but carried herself with the quiet command of someone who'd faced worse than late-night small-town policing. Her dark hair was tied neatly back, her blazer still sharp despite a long day. To anyone watching, she was just a mother, but beneath that calm exterior was a presence honed by years of discipline and danger. As she stepped outside, the door's bell chimed faintly, a small sound, but enough to draw the officer's attention. He turned slightly, his hand tightening on his belt. Danielle paused mid-step, assessing the scene instantly. One look at Malik's tense shoulders told her everything she needed to know. One look at the officer's stance confirmed it. And in that single heartbeat, the roles of this quiet night rearranged themselves. He thought he was in control. Malik thought he was in trouble. But the woman walking toward them, calm, deliberate, unflinching, was about to show them both what real power looks like. The tension didn't start with shouting, it began with silence. The kind of silence that grows teeth. Malik stood still, his hands resting on the hood of the car, as the officer's flashlight traced over him, from shoes to shoulders, slow and invasive. The beam lingered too long, like it wasn't searching for danger, but justification. "License and registration," Officer Kane said, his tone flat but laced with an edge. Malik swallowed, his voice soft but steady. "It's my mom's car, sir. She's right." "I didn't ask who it belongs to." Kane cut him off, stepping closer. The air between them thickened with something unspoken, power being tested. "I asked for license and registration." Malik nodded quickly, keeping his hands visible, his movements deliberate. He reached slowly toward the open car door, his pulse quickening as he remembered every story, every name turned hashtag. His breath caught, not out of guilt, but out of memory. "Keep your hands where I can see them." Kane barked suddenly. The command cracked the quiet night like lightning. Malik froze, both hands hovering in the air. From across the lot, the convenience store door opened again. Ding. Danielle Carter stepped out, coffee cup in hand, her gaze instantly finding her son. Her pace slowed. The scene unfolded before her like a script she'd seen too many times. Kane's posture had changed, chest puffed, chin lifted, the stance of a man enjoying the sound of his own authority. Malik stood small beneath the harsh floodlights, his shadow long and trembling on the pavement. "Sir, please," Malik said quietly, "I'm not." "Quiet." Kane snapped. He stepped in closer, his hand brushing against his holster again. A reflex born from ego, not threat. That's when Danielle's coffee hit the ground. The paper cup tumbled, spilling in slow motion across the pavement. She moved forward, calm, controlled, every step measured. "Officer," her voice cut through the night like a clean blade. "Step back from my son." Kane turned, surprise flickering across his face. I'm conducting a traffic." "No," she interrupted, standing squarely between them now. "You're profiling a child. My child." For a moment, the world seemed to narrow to three people and the hum of the streetlight above them. Kane's jaw tightened. "You need to stand aside, before you interfere with." Danielle reached slowly into her purse, eyes never leaving his. Malik's breath hitched, until he saw it. The slim, black leather wallet, worn at the edges, snapping open with a flick of her wrist. The badge caught the light. FBI, Special Agent Danielle Carter. Kane's face drained of color. The bravado cracked. His mouth opened, but no words came. Danielle stepped closer, her tone now firm, low, unmistakably authoritative. "Now, Officer Kane, let's talk about probable cause." And just like that, the night that began in silence found its voice, calm, commanding, and undeniable. The parking lot had gone still again. But this time, it wasn't peace. It was pressure. A quiet so dense that even the hum of the neon lights felt intrusive. Danielle stood tall under the harsh glow, her FBI badge gleaming faintly against the black of her blazer. Officer Kane's eyes darted between the badge and her face, his posture stiffening. The arrogance that once filled his frame began to crumble at the edges, replaced by a flicker of doubt. The kind that comes when a man realizes the script he's used his whole life no longer applies. "Special Agent Carter," she said evenly, her voice low but heavy with authority. "Now, tell me exactly what threat you saw in a 17-year-old pumping gas." Kane blinked, caught between habit and humiliation. I was responding to suspicious activity," he stammered, his voice faltering for the first time. "Suspicious activity," she repeated, each syllable deliberate. "Describe it." He hesitated. The silence stretched long enough to expose the truth. There was nothing suspicious. Not really. Just a kid in a hoodie, brown skin, alone at night. Her eyes didn't flinch. "You didn't see a threat, officer. You saw a profile. You saw my son." Kane's jaw flexed. "With all due respect, Respect." Danielle's tone sharpened, but her body remained still. "You pointed a flashlight at his face. You reached for your weapon. You shouted at a child who did nothing wrong. Respect isn't in your words, officer. It's in your restraint. And tonight, you had none." Malik stood a few feet behind her now, still frozen, part fear, part disbelief. He had seen officers shout before. He had seen people argue. But he had never seen power bend. Kane took a half step back, searching for the command he'd lost. "I was just doing my job," he muttered. Danielle's gaze softened, but her words stayed sharp. "That's the line, isn't it? Doing my job. You say it like it clears you." She paused, her tone quieter now, cutting deeper. "But your badge doesn't give you the right to decide who belongs where. It gives you the responsibility to protect. That's a difference you forgot tonight." Her words landed like slow thunder. Kane's eyes flickered downward, the weight of exposure pressing against his chest. Behind them, the cashier had stepped to the door, peering out quietly. A couple passing by on the sidewalk slowed their pace, sensing the gravity of the moment. The gas station lights felt brighter now, as if the night itself was forcing everything into view. Danielle reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her phone. "What's your badge number, Officer Kane?" He hesitated again. The authority had shifted so completely it almost disoriented him. There's no need for badge number." Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Authority, when real, doesn't shout, it simply exists. Kane swallowed, muttering the number, eyes on the ground. She typed it calmly, then looked at him one last time. "You'll be hearing from Internal Affairs," she said. "And maybe, just maybe, you'll start seeing the difference between control and courage." For a moment, no one spoke. The wind picked up slightly, rustling the small flags on the cruiser's antenna. Malik finally exhaled, a shaky, almost disbelieving breath. Kane shifted, shame coloring his face now, but also something else, recognition. He looked at Malik, then at Danielle. For the first time, the silence wasn't filled with power. It was filled with reflection. "I didn't mean for it to go that way," he said quietly, but the words sounded hollow even to him. Danielle studied him for a long second. "Change doesn't start with apologies, officer. It starts with accountability. If you really didn't mean it, do better next time. Because for boys like him," she motioned to Malik, "next time isn't always guaranteed." Her voice softened slightly, but it still carried that edge of truth that couldn't be ignored. "You wear that badge to serve, not to scare. The world's already full of fear. We don't need you adding to it." Kane's eyes glistened faintly, though he said nothing more. Slowly, he nodded, not out of agreement, but out of realization. As he turned back toward his cruiser, the radio inside crackled faintly, breaking the silence. He paused, glancing once more at Malik, no longer as a suspect, but as a son. Then he climbed in, the door closing gently this time. No slamming. No authority. Just quiet. Danielle turned to Malik. Her face softened instantly, the mother replacing the agent. She reached up, brushed his cheek. You okay, baby? Malik nodded, eyes still wide. Yeah, I just didn't know you'd. She smiled faintly. That's the thing about power, Malik. The real kind doesn't need to announce itself. It just shows up when it's needed. The cruiser pulled away, its taillights shrinking into the dark. The night exhaled again. Long, heavy, and clean. For the first time in a long while, the street felt safe. Not because of who had the badge, but because of who stood up to it. The night had nearly returned to silence, but something was different now, like the air itself had shifted. The sound of the police cruiser faded into the distance, swallowed by the hum of streetlights and the low buzz of the gas pumps. Yet, what lingered wasn't noise. It was clarity. Malik leaned against the car, his shoulders still tense, his hands trembling faintly. His mother's badge was back in her pocket, but the image of it, that flash of authority, that moment of unveiled truth, stayed etched in his mind. He'd seen 1,000 videos like this online, watched 100 stories end the same way. Anger, shouting, injustice. But this time was different. His mother hadn't fought rage with rage. She fought it with composure. With truth. With presence. Danielle glanced at him, her expression calm but her eyes softening. You see what happened back there? She asked quietly. Malik nodded. Yeah. You didn't even raise your voice. That's the part they never expect, she said. They're ready for the yelling. They're ready for fear. But they're never ready for calm. Calm is power, the kind they can't touch. Malik took a slow breath, letting the words settle. For the first time, he wasn't just feeling small under authority. He was beginning to understand the strength of his own silence. He looked up at his mother. You weren't scared. Danielle smiled faintly. Every mother's scared. But fear doesn't get to drive. Truth does. Her voice wasn't proud or angry. It was steady, like someone who had spent her whole life learning the difference between standing firm and standing loud. In that moment, Malik realized this wasn't just about one cop or one night. It was about something larger, the quiet revolution that begins when people refuse to shrink in the face of prejudice. The gas station lights flickered once, as if the night itself took a breath of relief. Malik reached for the nozzle, finished fueling the car, and finally smiled. Power had changed hands, not through force, not through fury, but through grace under fire. And that was the kind of power that lasts. The days that followed moved like slow echoes of that night, quiet, cautious, and heavy with meaning. The story of what happened at the gas station spread through the small town like smoke, first whispered between locals, then spoken out loud, until even those who wanted to ignore it couldn't. Officer Bradley Kane was called into the precinct the next morning. The captain didn't need a formal complaint. Danielle's report had already reached the bureau, and internal affairs was waiting. Kane sat in the small, grey-walled room that so many others before him had sat in. But for the first time in his career, he wasn't the one asking the questions. He was the one answering them. They played the gas station security footage, the flashlight in the boy's face, the sudden aggression, the moment his hand brushed the holster. Then, the shift, the instant recognition when the badge came out. It was all there, captured in unflinching clarity. He watched in silence, his jaw tight. No yelling, no excuses. Just the weight of seeing himself from the outside. The arrogance that once felt like strength now looked small. When the recording ended, the investigator said only one thing: do you understand what you did wrong? Kane nodded slowly. For once, the answer didn't come from training or pride, it came from truth. Yes, sir, he said quietly. I do. Across town, Malik sat on the front porch with his mother. The afternoon sun cast long shadows over the steps, and the world felt gentler somehow. Lighter, maybe, because they'd faced the storm and survived it. He turned to her. Do you think he'll change? Danielle took a sip of her coffee, watching a group of kids ride their bikes down the street. Maybe, she said. But change doesn't happen overnight. It happens when the truth makes someone uncomfortable enough to see themselves differently. Malik nodded, thoughtful. So, we just wait. No, she said, smiling faintly. We live. We keep showing up. We stay seen. That was her version of justice. Not revenge, not retribution, but a quiet correction of balance. A week later, a small letter arrived. The envelope bore the official seal of the department. Inside, a single paragraph confirmed what Malik already sensed. Officer Kane had been suspended pending retraining and review. It wasn't everything, but it was something. Danielle placed the letter on the table, her expression unreadable for a moment, then calm. It's a start, she said. That evening, as they drove past the same gas station, Malik looked out the window. The lights glowed softly now, peaceful again. No flashing sirens. No raised voices. Just a mother and son, moving forward. And in that silence, Malik understood the real consequence of that night. Not in punishment, but in perspective. Power can be stripped. Control can be lost. But truth? Truth remains. In the end, it wasn't the badge that defined power that night. It was the restraint. The calm. The courage to stand in truth when fear demanded silence. Danielle didn't need to raise her voice or draw her weapon to remind the world what justice looks like. She simply stood, unshaken, unafraid, proving that authority rooted in integrity speaks louder than intimidation ever could. Malik learned something, too, that real strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it's found in steady breathing, in not reacting when the world tries to provoke you, in knowing that dignity is a shield no one can take from you. And as the night faded into memory, one truth remained. The greatest power isn't the kind that commands obedience, it's the kind that earns respect. Because authority without empathy isn't leadership, it's fear in uniform. And the moment fear meets grace, it loses every time.